So by the time the last season of Twilight Zone rolled around, we were getting a bunch of hit and miss episodes. This was a hit, and it kind of harkened to what the Twilight Zone comic book was going to be in the years to come. The great Gladys Cooper was the lead in this, who basically ruled TZ and all her performances. It's called Night Call. Now directed by Jacques Tournier, which is kind of weird because Tournier means turn, and written by the great Richard Matheson. It's based on Long Distance Call, aka Sorry Right Number by Richard Matheson. Production code 2610, came out a week before Valentine's Day in '64. The great Gladys Cooper plays Elva Keane, Nora Marlowe, Margaret Phillips, and Martine Bartlett as Miss Finch. Now, the previous episode, Black Leather Jacket, some of the worst in Twilight Zone history, and of course, Fried Angus with Love was just as bad the next set. But this movie had a lot of chills and a lot of thought-provoking talking about being old and being shut in. Now, Night Call, again, follows an elderly woman, played by Cooper, who receives persistent disturbing phone calls from an anonymous caller. The episode is based on Matheson's original short story, which appeared in November '53 issue of Beyond Fantasy Fiction. The title was changed to Long Distance Call when the story was anthologized. The story ends differently than the TV episode. Now, in Rod's opening narration, Miss Elva Keane lives alone in the outskirts of London Flats, a tiny rural community in Maine. Some people believe this is probably as north as probably Prescott, but all depends how you look at it. Up until now, the pattern of Miss Keane's existence being him lying in her bed or sitting in her wheelchair, reading books, listening to a radio, eating, napping, taking medication, and waiting for something different to happen. Miss Keane doesn't know it yet, but her period of waiting has just ended, for something different is about to happen to her, has in fact already begun to happen by two most unaccountable telephone calls in the middle of a stormy night, calls routed directly through the Twilight Zone. Now, she's an elderly paraplegic woman, and Elva starts receiving strange anonymous phone calls in the middle of a stormy night. During the first call, she hears only static. Later, she hears a man moaning, and she repeatedly demands to know who is calling. The man continues to call and keeps repeating, "Hello," over and over. Finally, he says, "Hello, where are you? I want to talk to you." Elva, terrified, screams at the man to leave her alone. Now, when Elva calls a phone company who traces the calls to a telephone line that's falling in a cemetery, Elva and her housekeeper visit a cemetery where she finds that a line is resting on the grave of her long-deceased fiancé, Brian Douglas. Elva says that she always insisted of having her own way, and Brian always did what she said. Now, Brian died a week before they would be married. That day, she insisted on driving, lost control of the car, and hit a tree. The accident killed Brian and rendered her paraplegic. So, looking back in anger at your youth, or looking back in joy at your youth, certain incidents impact you. I'll give an example. My mother died from a joyrider in 2005 on a lonely highway outside Bathurst, New Brunswick in the Lardville region. Her death sent ripples through the whole family, of which our family has not recovered since. So that's what happened with this accident, because her long fiancé is long dead, but the ripples of that accident are still being felt today. Now, Elva, now that she can talk to him again, realizes she won't have to be alone. At home, she picks up the phone and calls to Brian's ghost, pleading with him to answer. He replies that she told him to leave her alone. He always does what she says. Then the line goes dead, leaving Elva alone and crying in her bed. So some people didn't like the ending, because it wasn't Gladys Cooper's fault that she mistrusted a bad phone call, but there's no peace and love in the Twilight Zone. It usually ends bad. Now, the caller himself was never identified in the original short story. The night after she finds out the voice is coming from the cemetery, she receives a call in which the voice says, "Hello, Mrs. Keane, I'll be right over." The short story creates a heightened level of horror because the unknown speaker on the phone gradually improves in cognition and speech to the point where they seek to interact with her physically, conjuring up images of the walking dead and reanimated corpses. Now, the idea of the movie, or like the teleplay, we know something is going on, but we really don't want to talk about it, because to say that there could be somebody she knows is calling from the grave is kind of freaky, because we don't know if he would call on a regular basis, or that's how where most of these contacts like I want to go out, take me, and you would pick her up. Now, the original anthologized short story titled Long Distance Call was changed to Night Call because there had been already an episode of Twilight Zone in '61 during the videotape era with Billy Mummy of that title. Now, the premiere of Night Call was scheduled for Friday, November 22nd, '63. However, hours before it was to air, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. It was rescheduled several times, as were all the other network shows. Night Call finally premiered on February 7th, 1964. Now, the Mark Scott Zicari, the Twilight Zone companion, especially I think the 4th edition or 3rd edition, really is one of his favorite episodes. But Richard Matheson had done a lot of Twilight Zone influence and episodes for a while. Now, just to recount Matheson's work, he did The Last Flight, Twilight Zone, Nick of Time, A World of Difference, A World of His Own, The Invaders, Once Upon a Time, Little Girl Lost, Young Man's Fancy, Dead Ship, Mute, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, Steel, Spur of the Moment as well. Now, the idea, adaptations by others, like these, and When the Sky Was Open, Third from the Sun, and also adaptation of The Omega Man, The Incredible Shrinking Woman, What Dreams May Come, Stir of Echoes, Dance of the Dead, My Ambition, I Am Legend, I Am Omega, The Box, The Splendid Source, and Real Steel. Now, authors who run in the family as Richard and Christian Matheson and Chris Matheson are well-regarded creators. Now, novels, I Am Legend, the famous book, The Shrinking Man, The Stir of Echoes, The Beatles Warriors, Hell House, Bid Time Return, What Dreams May Come, and Earth Bound. So Richard Matheson, he had a passel of good writers that Rod had used. But I think, in my personal opinion, Richard Matheson was the best because he could write the human condition better than anybody else. So Night Call, like I said, for 20, I think it was 24, 25 minutes, it's kind of creepy because it feels, again, like a House of Mystery comic book. And when Rod was at his best, especially later seasons, is screenplays, or his motivation of the writers for screenplays. They had to Ripley's Believe It or Not style, or Boris Karloff, like The Gold Key, which I call the film horror in a 8-page capsulized. Some of the best writing you've never read are in The Gold Key. And Twilight Zone was getting more and more into the kind of the House of Mystery. The comic books themselves were very underrated. Some really, really interesting plots and themes. And it kept the spirit of Rod alive for quite some time. So the comic book started when the show was on, and I think it went until the early 80s, give or take. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the story of Night Call, created by the great Richard Matheson. If you like what you're doing here, or TZ profiles, let us know in the like, comment, subscribe, or share.